For the past 2 weeks, I've been using the brand new Studio display from Apple. Have you ever thought to yourself, you know what I want? I want a monitor with similar technology to displays found 3 years ago, but for $1,600? And if you have had those thoughts, good news! This display could be right up your alley. And before we get started, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. The Apple Studio display promises to take a lot of Apple's new visual technology and functionality expertise and bring that down to a more reasonable level compared to the very expensive XDR display. I mean, seriously, that XDR display has a stand that costs almost the same amount as this whole display. And while I do like a lot about this monitor, and I really do, despite the shellacking it's going to get in the first part of this video, it's hard to look at this from a value perspective and not call it charitably as expensive. It's hard to start anywhere on a potentially overpriced display without starting at the price. The Apple Studio display can be had in a few different configurations. I hesitate to call it the base model, but the standard version comes with a glossy glass finish and a tilt adjustable stand, and this version will cost you $15.99. For that money, you'll get the 27-inch 5K display with built-in ultra-wide angle camera, studio sounding speakers, and a very similar, if not the same microphone array from the 24-inch M1 iMac. You also get a built-in A13 processor, a nominal amount of storage you can't really use, it's more of a system thing, a semi-non-removable power cable, a Thunderbolt port, and 3 USB Type-C ports. There are a few customization options in that you could get Apple's nano texture finish instead of the glossy option, and that will tack another $300 on this already pricey display. There is also a VESA mount selection and a tilt and height adjustable stand, but that complicated stand will add another $400. So if you get all of the option, the fairly overpriced $15.99 price tag balloons into an absolutely overpriced $22.99 markup. Team, I have to tell you, and I'm absolutely talking to you right now, this monitor is too expensive. Yes, it's a very niche monitor with some very niche specs that makes it a unicorn in the market, and I have enjoyed using this an awful lot over these past couple of weeks, but dang, that price hurts. Which very easily segues us into the first thing that I've disliked over the past 2 weeks. It's the price. It's the price. I get it. 5K is expensive. There's no other way around it. If you look on the market right now, you'll see that other 5K monitors are just as, if not more so expensive than the Studio display. And yes, these are all varying sizes of monitors because 5K is pretty rare. My personal issue with the price isn't that the monitor costs a lot of money. I am willing to pay for quality. It's that at its base model, it's borderline unusable because it's built too low, though let's put a pin in that because we'll get more on the construction in a second. If you were going to charge us this much, you have to meet us halfway, and I feel like the whole point of this display is to meet Apple consumers halfway, but you got to come towards us enough for it to be halfway. I feel like this hasn't gone far enough. I'm obviously not sitting on Apple's design or engineering or marketing meetings, but the price to performance here feels like it's not in alignment. What's crazy is I don't mean the quality of the display itself, because we're going to talk about that in the things that I like, and we're going to talk about that a lot in the things that I like because it's really good. Specifically here, what I'm talking about is the next thing I hate, and I absolutely hate this so much. Remember how I said there were 3 different stand options? You can't change any of those by yourself. You either have to buy the one model you will ever want, or I have heard through rumors and news articles that you can take this into certain Apple stores to get the mount changed out. But this is so frustrating to me, and I can't think of another way to put it. Look at it from this perspective. On my desk over there is a $4,000 professional level LG OLED ultrafine display. Even this high-end production monitor lets you swap out VESA or a regular height adjustable stand in the box, the original shipping box. Here's another example from my $200 monitor I use for my thumbnails. It also has a height adjustable stand in the box, or VESA mounting options. Either end of the spectrum, cheap to very expensive, all have this functionality. Come on. If you are going to charge for a premium display in the year 2022, you gotta let us do this ourselves. Apple, you've already got a terrible reputation for right to repair, and yes, you have made attempts to fix those, but this is so irritating to me, it almost ruins the whole experience because it combines with the next thing I don't like. And remember that thing we pinned earlier? Let's unpin that. let's talk about this, because the tilt model display is too short. Like short as in it places the monitor really low and in an uncomfortable position to use right out of the box. Look at this. Look, this is just me normally sitting. The monitor is already well below eye level. And having an 8 to 10 week turnaround on picking the wrong one really puts that whole not letting us change it out ourselves thing into perspective. And before you get angry about me for having height preferences, I'm a short person. I'm 5'6". If this should work for anybody, it's me. But it's unusably too low. You either have to really be uncomfortable and lean back to get your eye level correct, you have to prop it up on something, or you just have to get it replaced. Because even if you have a standing desk, like it's gotta be your armpits. Like that's gonna be uncomfortable. I guess if you're 8, that might also work. If you could swap this out for a VESA in the box, it would not bother me as much because VESA is essentially infinitely customizable. Yes, I could have just purchased that from the beginning, but that's not the point. Maybe I have a desk right now that a stand works for, but in the future, I want to move to VESA or vice versa. I don't want to have to rely on Apple. I don't want to have to rely on anybody to do that for me. High-end monitors, any monitors, they should be built to include the 4 screws needed to use on an open desk system. I also don't like that there are no standard inputs on the monitor, no HDMI, no DisplayPort. Here it's all Thunderbolt or USB-C all the time. Yes, it's supposed to work with Macs, and sure, that's fine, and it works great with my Macs. But as somebody that bounces back and forth between macOS and other operating systems, it's hard for me to use a monitor that's just so strictly focused on one. Yes, I have seen folks get this to work with Windows Computer, but I just would have preferred some more standard inputs. And something else that I don't exactly dislike, I don't like it, I don't dislike it, I think it's just weird, it's that the cable is like semi-permanently attached. Yes, I've seen videos of folks Herculesing these off, but in the box it comes attached, and it's clearly not meant to be removed by like me. I don't dislike it, it's just weird. I don't know the last time that I've used a monitor that has a permanently attached cable before. I like that if it breaks, you know, there is a way to fix it without replacing the whole thing, but it seems like a problem that was introduced and solved. It's weird. Thanks to today's sponsor, Squarespace, you can create your own very beautiful website. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a professional website, online store, or portfolio. It's easy to claim a domain/URL, create a custom site that matches your style, and bring your ideas to life. Head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head over to squarespace.com/everydaydad to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. But I have to ask you directly, team, have you ever had something on paper that was a frustrating option, but once you started using it, your mind was totally changed? Because despite those 2 pages of complaints, I don't know that I've ever had a product that I've complained so much about before. There are substantial things that I really like about the Studio Display. First off, and this should come as no surprise, but this monitor works perfectly with my Mac Studio and my MacBook Pro. I feel like that needs some explanation because obviously a monitor should work with a computer, right? Like that would be a thing you don't like if it doesn't work. What I mean by this is ever since Monterey was released, my wife and I have both had external display issues with our Macs. Me with my MacBooks and her with her M1 iMac. It can take a serious amount of time for the Mac to recognize and wake up an external display, and frankly, it's been very annoying to live with. That expensive monitor I was talking about earlier, it takes about 3 to 4 times longer to wake up in the morning or after the computer goes to sleep than the Studio Display. I found this to be the absolute fastest display that I've ever used. This includes displays back on macOS Big Sur. It's lightning, get the pun, it's lightning fast. If you've ever opened a MacBook before and had the display turn on before you've even gotten the lid all the way up, it's that kind of fast. This works fantastic, and something that I've become really spoiled with over the past 2 weeks because it's really noticeable when I had to unhook it to set it here and then get some work done, which leads me into the next thing I've liked. The display quality itself is, holy crap, the display is gorgeous. Yes, it's capped at 60 Hz refresh rate, and yes, it does not have any built-in HDR modes, but this is one of the best looking displays that I've ever seen. Everything on this monitor looks incredible. And what's funny is that 600 nits of brightness is so bright, it can be uncomfortable to look at when it's set to max levels in my little basement office down here. I don't normally talk about color accuracy too much here because I'm the everyday dad, and I feel like there are folks that are much better equipped to do that. But one note I want to make is I always calibrate my displays with a professional color calibration tool, and the Apple Studio Display is the closest I've ever seen to dead on accurate right out of the box. I do really wish this was a 32-inch monitor because personally I think that's the perfect dimension for a single display setup, but I also haven't found myself too constrained or boxed in by the 27-inch diagonal reach either. It's certainly more usable than some of my previous crazy ultra-wide monitors that have you go cross-eyed looking from one end of the screen to the other. This is a darn good looking piece of glass. The issue that I have, the market is full with a bunch of other monitors that can say the same thing for like half the price. I also really like the camera built into the monitor. No, it doesn't look the best. In fact, for my uses, it looks about on par with the MacBook Pro camera. That's not bad, but it's not great. The key thing for me though is how convenient it is. Convenience is my love language. I take a ton of virtual meetings throughout the week, and I value convenience over everything else. The image quality has to be good enough, and here I think it is good enough. I do wish it was better, and this is the one time on any recent Apple products that I wish they hadn't used the ultra wide angle camera, because it doesn't do this monitor justice. The monitor's already going to be far enough away that I think a standard wide angle would have been fine, but here, in the ease of use category, this camera cannot be beat. Plus, the speakers are really good too, much better than I've ever heard on a straight up monitor before. Well, unless you count the M1 iMac as a monitor, because those are really good too. Yes, I probably wouldn't use these as my only speaker. You can pay a little bit of money and get much higher quality audio elsewhere, but if you are keeping your desk to an absolute minimum, if that's your priority, I think you could use this comfortably without too much of an issue. And the build quality is fantastic. This might be the best constructed monitor that I've ever come across. Sure, I'm not much of a monitor fanatic, but I have that very expensive LG OLED, and I've got a few other BenQ types around the house, and not a single one of them can stand up to the studio display for actually just feeling like your money was well spent. While you don't normally look at the back of a monitor, this thing also just looks really nice. If you're one of those folks that wants your office to have a very clean, consistent aesthetic to something like your Mac Studio or your MacBook, this will absolutely fit right in. It's seriously gorgeous, and it's just a great monitor. I just wish it wasn't as expensive. And if you like this video and you want to see some other really cool accessories for the Mac Studio, you can find my video talking about the ones that I personally use by clicking right here. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.